Welcome into another edition of the Commitment Issues podcast. I'm Woody Wommack, joined on the phone from beautiful Austin, Texas by Nick Krueger. Nick, how you doing today?
Well, I'm doing great. I'm a little worried. We have a very SEC-oriented podcast today. I'm going to try and hold my own, but you're definitely going to have to carry the ship, carry the burden today.
Well, what's new? I think the listeners have come to expect as such. Rob Cassidy not joining us today because he's on the road, actually. Road dog decided to drop in at a school about 3 hours away from his house, which was nice of him to do. Just swing by there on his way to get the mail. So hope you're enjoying the road trip, old Robbie. We want to remind everyone you can reach out to us on Twitter at Rivals Podcast. I'm at Rivals Woody. Nick is at Rivals Krug City. Of course, we work for Rivals.com. We cover recruiting. Visit our website, for crying out loud. We got all kinds of content there. A lot of stuff on the national pages now free, so you can read it and then take to Twitter to make fun of us about our writing. And then go to iTunes, go to Google Play, subscribe to the show, just search Commitment Issues. So let's get right into the top five, Nick. We're going to start with Tennessee. What's going on at Tennessee? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, we talked about it a little bit off the air. Jalen Hurd, a former five-star, very controversial five-star, if I remember, from back in the day, decides to quit the team mid-season. He was benched in the second half of the South Carolina game the other day. There's been a few games where he didn't play in the second half. He had a massive season last year, 1,200 yards. He was on his way to becoming the program's all-time leading rusher. And now he decides to just up and quit mid-season, and word is he's going to transfer and go ahead and focus on playing tight end or H-back or another position, which I believe we thought he should have played out of high school. Not that I'm bragging on that one. But anyway, from the outside looking in, Nick, what's your take on the situation? And more importantly, what kind of effect can this have on recruiting when recruits see several highly ranked guys or guys they view as stars and guys Tennessee has pushed as stars leaving the program, especially mid-season? This is the second one after Preston Williams also quit the team earlier in the year.
Yeah, it's definitely a strange vibe out there going on with Tennessee. And you and me have talked several times about various players that we've, or you more specifically, have covered over the past few years, and kind of what goes on behind the scenes at that program, what the relationships to the coaches are, how they feel they're being used, their roles and things like that. And it's always been a real, it's always been a real sort of mysterious situation as to their methodology, as to how they choose to, divvy out snaps and minutes and roles and stuff, with certain players. So, I think this is just kind of another extension of that. And we sort of made mention of kind of the crack showing a little bit in Tennessee's overall confidence this season when LSU and Florida had that game canceled and rescheduled, and Butch Jones comes out and talks about the playoff implications for his team should they lose a couple of games. And, it's just really, it's really a lot of little things that kind of add up to a bigger picture of, this program not really having, a clearly defined identity for the team, I suppose you could say, in terms of an attitude and what they want to get accomplished. And you start to see these guys kind of wandering around, their role changes on a week to week basis. You've got a guy like Preston who already comes in as, sort of a little bit of a head case, and that situation wasn't nurtured properly. He's the first to bolt. Jalen, you mentioned, is probably, is a guy that has a skill set that could be used at a couple of different positions, and ends up in a situation where he's not being used at any of them. You watch their games a lot closer than I do, so you would have a better feel for that than me. But, like you said, as an outsider looking in, it really just seems like we've got a scattershot of things going on out there on a week-to-week basis, and that's really starting to take its toll.
Yeah, I think the problem you have from a recruiting standpoint is, this is not good. You can't have guys coming in, especially highly ranked guys, whether the coaches think they're good or not. I think it's a concern when you got Drew Richmond come in. Okay, he was a 5-star. Everyone wanted him. Alabama was in it to the end to try to get him.
Well, they flipped him. He was committed, and they flipped him at the last minute. They must have made him some, big time promise.
Right, he was committed to Ole Miss, so he goes there, and then he ends up redshirting. He comes in. He struggled at the beginning of the year when he was the starter. He then gets benched. He comes back in the Alabama game and actually, played pretty well in a game that was kind of out of hand. But then he goes back to the bench. So you got him. He's unhappy. And then you have a guy like Kyle Phillips, who was a five-star defensive end. They move him to D tackle, despite him not being big enough as a freshman. He ends up getting hurt. And now, he's kind of expressed desire maybe to not play that position. He is playing that position now. You got Preston Williams, who, is a nightmare, obviously as a personality. The coaches and him had major issues. He decides to leave. And now the same with Hurd. The problem is, from an outside perspective, and more importantly for other coaches who are negative recruiting, if you're a five-star guy, yeah, I mean, you're going to obviously negative recruit against Tennessee. I mean, now if the kids were left to their own accord to make their decision, they don't, you and I both know that high school kids don't really look too far back into the history books when it comes to see things going. But you better believe that every coach is going to remind them going forward that look, these are highly ranked guys who went there. They couldn't get on the field. They struggled. They didn't like it. And that's ammunition for a school, even like you mentioned, Ole Miss that lost Richmond. I mean,
well, and the other thing, the other theme that we've talked about with Tennessee going back, through the course of this season is how heavy of a focus they've put on recruiting out of state as well. And so when you don't have the opportunity to plead your case to guys, and you're trying to get guys from out of state, and then this is what they're seeing from an outsider's perspective, that certainly doesn't help them on the recruiting front either.
Yeah, exactly. And it would be one thing if it's one guy. Sure, there are guys who don't work out, but they're starting to stack up on top of each other here. And as a Tennessee fan, I think it's you got to be disappointed because the way they started, it looked like they were a team of destiny in terms of them winning those games in the fashion that they did. And instead, maybe some of those miracle losses. I mean, think about it. They have a Hail Mary against Georgia. They recover a fumble in the end zone in overtime. That was actually Jalen Hurd who got on that ball. If those things don't happen, all of a sudden you're 3-5 instead of 5-3, and it's truly a nightmare season. So I expect them to finish the season well. Probably, they should be favored in every game they play, but still just the recruiting implications are good here. They're already kind of having a down year in terms of their class. I was expecting them to maybe turn some of those lower-ranked guys into higher-ranked players, but the momentum not in their favor right now. So I'm sure Tennessee fans will like this discussion when I share it on the message board. So prepare your Twitter mentions, Nick. That's at Rivals Krug City.
Yeah, well, let's just, it's not our fault what's going on out there. We're just talking about it.
Right. Well, that's it. That's how you'd think it would work. So, let's jump into Ole Miss. Because you mentioned it's SEC heavy. Not just the old Vols that are having some issues. Ole Miss, they're losing games. We know, there was still some stuff going on with the NCAA investigation. And now they're losing recruits. They lose four-star linebacker Willie Gay, one of your favorite prospects in the class. He decommits. And then they have a decommitment from Brian Jones, who's a four-star defensive end from Louisiana. And all of a sudden, the two of them, they decommit. And then you've got Michigan coming after Gay. And then Oklahoma immediately offers Jones. And I don't think these are the kind of guys that are going to get back in the fold. I mean, from what I'm hearing at Michigan, they're basically already considering Gay as a guy that's going to be in their class. So I don't know. You look at Ole Miss's class, and this is, and I know there's uncertainty there, and I really think that they've kind of tampered down their recruiting efforts just because they don't know what to tell kids. I mean, the coaches don't necessarily know what's going to happen. Nobody knows. I mean, we've seen these NCAA investigations drag on, and I think it killed Miami's recruiting for several years. It hurt USC tremendously, and now it's Ole Miss who's sitting here. You're looking at the team rankings, Nick, and they're way down the list. They're 13th in the conference. They've got 10 commits, only one four-star. Is it time to start panicking if you're an old Rebels fan?
Yeah, I think so a little bit, and if my research is correct, I believe they had 3 other decommitments last month as well, 2 of them being junior college commitments. So, really things have kind of been on a downward trend for them for the past couple of months. And I don't think their play on the field has this season has really helped things at all. In addition to, what you mentioned earlier going on with the NCAA. One of the kids that I just went to go see a couple weeks ago, three-star receiver R.J. Sneed. I reported that, I thought that he was between Nebraska and Ole Miss as a commitment that was supposed to happen this past weekend, but he's doing one of those video commitments, and sometimes things with those, it's got to be a flexible date. So,
he's needed more time to
yeah. But one of the things in talking to somebody close to him that was brought up was a little bit of trepidation over what's going on with the NCAA there. So I can't really, it's every kid values those things differently. Certainly here in Texas, I know I've still talked to a number of kids that still have interest in Baylor as a program, and they're just not hearing from the coaches out there because the coaches, I think, have a lot of uncertainty as far as what their role is going to be with that program going forward. I don't necessarily think that's the case at Ole Miss, but there is something to be said for what sort of consequences will be still yet to be determined there. But I mean, yeah, you brought up what I was going to bring up as well. Michigan and Oklahoma coming after both of those guys. And, we talked about negative recruiting being, a point of conversation in relation to Tennessee. And, you got to think that, with the way things were trending at Ole Miss and the quickness of, Michigan and Oklahoma sweeping in on those two guys, with their offers, I think both of them had them come within a day or either before or after their decommitment announcements. You got to think that had something to do with their decisions as well there. So, this is just how it goes sometimes, right? I mean, when you're winning, everything goes well, and you can kind of talk away some of the concerns when things, when you've had a number of disappointing losses like Ole Miss has. I mean, it's not like they're getting blown out, but I mean, just the heartbreaking fashion that they lose some of these games. I think there's something to be said. It's more than just losing. It's like, it's just, it just seems like instead of it being a team of destiny in a positive way for Tennessee, it seems to have been the other side of the coin for Ole Miss.
Well, yeah, and you know what? They have a really talented roster. I mean, you're talking about a team that was up a ton of points on Florida State. They were beating Alabama. I don't remember how big that lead was, but it was sizable. They only lost by 5 points. They put up 43 points on that defense. So the talent is there, but like you said, sometimes when the ball gets rolling downhill, it's hard to stop. I do think that, I said to you off air, if I'm Ole Miss, I just self-impose that bowl ban this year. Just forget it. Just take it and add that to your penalties right now to soften the blow. I haven't heard any talks about that, but we saw Louisville do that in basketball, and that worked out for them pretty well. I think, you talk about kids from Mississippi rarely leave the state. So if they can get this wrapped up, in the next 2 or 3 months, I'm sure the administration there is pushing. If they can get a resolution and just get the penalties they're going to get and move on, I think they can still get guys like Cam Akers. I think they can get Gay back in the class. I think they can get these guys. Top players from Mississippi don't want to leave. I mean, it's been proven. Go, check the stats, Nick. Get your facts straight. They don't want to leave. So I think that's something to watch. But if I'm an Ole Miss fan, I'm definitely nervous. And like you said, the season's been tough, especially with the talent they have on the roster. But guess what? They've got a lot of talented guys behind them. Shea Patterson's coming in next year. He'll be the starter. So I think there's a lot to watch there. Boy, we're right into another SEC team. We wanted to talk about Florida, and this is where our boy Rob, who would really come in handy, because Adarius Lemons, who was a 4-star commit, he's had all kinds of drama. I mean, this is a kid who we actually talked about last week. He got kicked off his high school team, and at that time was still committed to Florida. He, at one point, was committed to North Carolina. He flipped to Florida. He tweeted he was decommitted from Florida, didn't actually decommit, never told the coaches, then said, "Oh, I'm still committed." Then he gets kicked off his team, and now it's a disaster. Now he's, I think he got dropped. I mean, just because of the off-field issues, because if you look at the timing, as soon as he decommitted, they got a commitment from another running back, a 3-star out of Tampa named Malik Davis. They're a little bit different style running back, but I know Blake Alderman, who works for Inside the Gators, our Florida site, he really enjoyed his game, and he likes him. He thinks he's trending up. So this is what we talked about, Nick. Boy, you can't mess around getting kicked off your team, and clearly Florida's had enough. They're not playing any games, and our boy Lemons, who's very talented, he's a 4-star. I think he could be headed to the long road. So I guess when we talk about the Gators, you mentioned them earlier. They seem to be benefiting. They lost that game to Tennessee, which was a game they looked like they were in control of. They gave up 38 points in a row, I think, in the second half, but they seem to have their mojo back. You hear anything about them out there? I know they got a commitment last year from a quarterback in Texas. Are they still trying to recruit that state and get anything done?
A little bit, yeah. I mean, we saw, national recruiting co-director Adam Gorney write a story recently about Grant Delpit, former Texas, product here that transferred to IMG. He's been committed to LSU for some time. Gorney wrote that, he's considering taking a look at the Gators here at some point this season. I went to go see four-star linebacker Levi Jones during his Under Armour All-America game jersey presentation. And, he's a guy that Florida has started to make a priority recently because, his top team has been LSU. A lot of people expect Texas to be in the mix there because he's from Austin. Florida seems to think that they can make a push with him, and he says that they're in line for an official visit as well. When you look at how Florida's doing, this season in the SEC, quietly one of the better teams in the conference. Looking forward at the rest of their schedule, they have Arkansas coming up, which suddenly looks like a very winnable game. South Carolina, we don't give too much credit to. If they could go into LSU and beat LSU after all the drama and the black eye that came with that rescheduling snafu, I think that goes a long way towards their reputation with some guys around the area and around the Southeast. And they were considering LSU as well because, we, as good as Ed Orgeron has done in, kind of crazy circumstances, there's still a lot of question as to what his future is going to be there too. So, if they start competing with these other schools head to head, and they continue their success this season, I think they're a very viable option for, to come through and scoop up a lot of recruits here.
Yeah, it's interesting because I don't feel like they're recruiting on the level that they should be in terms of the big time names. I mean, when you think about the Gators, especially you and I having both lived and worked in Florida for several years, there's a ton of kids that want to go there. They're winning games. They're ranked higher than Florida State. Obviously, Miami is on a downturn still, even though Mark Richt is there. I think they got to capitalize. I would personally, I think they should close strong. If they can finish the season out well, they need to go out and get some big time guys. And I think they're involved. Actually, the 5-star Rob is dropping in on today. They're heavily involved there. I think they're considered the team to beat. So if they can start getting some players like that and kind of continue what they were doing under Will Muschamp. I mean, he never had an issue recruiting until once he became on the hot seat. But Jim McElwain is entrenched there. I think he just needs to get those assistants out on the road.
I don't think that they're not doing well. I just think that they're just a team that has kind of slid under the radar relative to all the drama that's going on with teams around them, that they just haven't owned the conversation as much as some other teams have.
Yeah, they're number 14 in the team rankings with 25 commits. I'd like to see them maybe. They've got 1 5-star committed, 9 4-stars, 13 3-stars. So I'd like to see them maybe upgrade a little bit there, but maybe, like you said, some of those guys move up in the rankings. Maybe Rob can drop in over there on Tampa while he's out on the road and take a look at that new running back commit as well. Let's move on. Now, we missed this topic. This is about a week and a half old, but I wanted to bring it back here. Donovan Jeter, who we talked about, he committed to Notre Dame, I believe when they had a bad loss at the beginning of the year when all the Notre Dame fans were freaking out. And we told them, you guys will be fine. And then now they proceeded to be 3-5. So I guess that freaking out was warranted. So Jeter committed to Notre Dame. Looked like he was locked in. He then flips to Michigan, which was kind of weird. I think it caught a lot of us by surprise, or at least, obviously we're not following the day-to-days of Donovan Jeter's recruitment because he's from a different area of the country. But he goes ahead and flips late last month, and then now he comes out, Nick. I got the old thing here from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. He starts talking about Harbaugh. He doesn't act like he's important. He's real down-to-earth and humble. He's easy to talk to. Talking to Brian Kelly wasn't fun. It wasn't cool. You have to make an appointment just to go to his office. Boy, talk about shots fired. So the kid comes out, rips Brian Kelly, praises Harbaugh, who, I think I've talked to him. I consider him a little bit eccentric. I don't know if cool is the way to go, but he's definitely not as buttoned up maybe as some other coaches. Um, but of course the kid had to come out later and apologize and thank thank Notre Dame for the scholarship opportunity. Obviously, it was cooked up by his coaches or his parents or something. Kids are going to say stupid stuff. I mean, I say stupid stuff, and I'm an adult. But does this kind of provide a window into the difference and why Harbaugh seems to have that mojo among recruits? I mean, is that coolness factor something that we think is really a big time advantage for the
Well,
Wolverines?
at the risk of getting myself into some hot water here, I mean, is it really that surprising? I mean, what do you see when you turn on the sports highlight show of your choice and you see Notre Dame highlights and you see Brian Kelly's face like four different shades of red every time he talks to a player when something goes wrong, and then you hear, I think, what did he go on to say in that story, that Harbaugh personally picked him up in a van and took him back to the hotel. Can you just imagine him showing up in like his dad polo and his khakis, and rolling up in the minivan and having a good time? Listen, I last weekend I went to go see our boy Chuck Filiaga. I asked him, which coach does he get along with the best? He didn't want to answer that question, but I said, which coach makes you laugh the most? And who did he say? Jim Harbaugh. So yeah, I mean, this isn't anything new to anybody. When you're dealing with kids that are 16, 17, 18 years old, yeah, like a goofy sense of humor is going to go a long way. I mean, look at our Twitter feeds. Look at the jokes that these kids make. Like, it's not. I mean, when Brian Kelly is making you make appointments to come and talk to him in his office, and creating such a business-like atmosphere and everything serious, and he's not recruiting to personality. He's recruiting to tradition at Notre Dame. I mean, you're going to get a certain breed of kid that fits your program, sure, but you're really narrowing the scope of kids that you're going to bring as far as a wide
Swath.
So yeah, I mean,
Swath is a good word.
yeah. Well, but anyway, I mean, that's just a long way of me saying that. Yeah, I think the way that Harbaugh's personality is and the way that he's recruiting kids right now goes a much further way than Brian Kelly's.
It's interesting. Notre Dame kind of, it does recruit itself. There's a certain type of guy that wants to go to Notre Dame. There's a certain kind of guy that they like. And, I obviously talking to a lot of the kids down here, I know a lot of the 2018 kids are interested in Notre Dame from the state of Georgia. And that's just because, there's still that factor of they're on NBC every game. And, I was like I remember I was arguing with somebody about it. And I was like, every game's on TV.
Well,
every football
and
game at every
if you go to
school.
Michigan too, I mean, especially with a huge program with a huge fan base, and as well as they're doing this season, you're going to find your way onto a big national spotlight television station every week playing for Michigan too. I mean, that's almost a moot.
The point the kid made was that their grandma could just turn on the TV with the antenna, and pick up NBC every week.
Well,
so I didn't really have a
that also works
works
when talking about you too, I suppose.
Yeah, we do know that I do watch games on one of my several TV screens is tuned to an over-the-air broadcast every week. Actually, I don't want to get too specific, but anyway, but guess what? Michigan, they're rolling, and I think they're in a position where they're going to start doing the old trade up. And I was talking to Michigan fans about it yesterday on the board on the Wolverine.com, which is our Michigan site. And they were asking me a lot of questions about, hey, what do we got going on here? Who we looking at? And I think, some of these guys who are lower ranked in the class, maybe at the bottom of the barrel, who don't have the same type of options, they're going out for the top prospects. I mean, they're going after Najee Harris. They're going after Cam Akers. They're not messing around. Now, you mentioned our boy Chuck Filiaga. They're after him. They're not playing games. I mean, they are going to try to go get some big-time talent, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them add. They don't have a 5-star now. They have several 4-stars. They're going to end up with 2 to 3 5-star commits. It's just a matter of when that happens and who the guys are. So keep on the lookout for that. And I think this is the worst fear that all these other fan bases that hate Harbaugh had. He's very hated down here in SEC country. You and I both know satellite camps don't do a whole lot for recruiting, but it does a lot for the brand, and the old brand keeps rolling along here. And this is a perfect example of him getting even more good publicity, even though it was bad publicity for our boy Donovan Jeter. Moving on, Florida State. Now, boy, we almost had to have you drop into Dallas, Nick, because all of a sudden, 4 5 stars from the state of Texas decide to drop in down there in Tallahassee. And what's going on? Is this a realistic possibility? It was a great game, great environment. We had Marvin Wilson, Walker Little, Texas Ranger, Jeffrey Okudah. Who was the other one? I forgot.
Baron Browning.
Baron Browning. I get Browning and Okudah mixed up, and I have done it for years. So those are four of the best prospects in the country, not to mention the state of Texas. What did they see out there? Are the Noles a realistic possibility? Did it surprise you? All the above. Go ahead.
No, I mean, it doesn't surprise me to see them all out there at once. And I know that was a school that they had all had planned going on an official too for some time now. I think I've thought for a long time that Ohio State was the team to beat for both Browning and Okudah. I've thought that Stanford was the team to beat for Walker Little, and Marvin Wilson's really the wild card. And I mean, if you've ever it's funny because when you talk to him and you talk to him about what he wants his future to be, he always brings up broadcast journalism, and he definitely has how to handle an interview down pat. I mean, every time he visits a school, everything that he says about his visit makes it sound like that's the school that he's going to, and the fans get in an uproar. That they're the new favorite just because he was on campus there and had glowing things to say about it. I think with Walker, everything that you hear about him is that he wants to, he kind of wants to stay closer to home. He has family concerns, in relation to him. He wants his family to be able to watch him play in person. So even though I think with Browning and Okudah being Ohio State leans, and they're all going to go up there with Marvin Wilson, I believe the November 26th weekend when Ohio State hosts Michigan for that game. I think that's the situation. The three of them up there are going to have to weigh that between their FSU visit that they all took together. I think there is some level of interest of them, all playing together. I think the situation of Marvin and Walker being teammates together at Episcopal out there in Houston, and kind of turning that into a situation where they would want to play together. I think that's sort of an overblown theory. I thought there was a potential for that if they were both considering Ole Miss, but as we mentioned with Ole Miss, they've got some things to sort out that I think kind of takes them out of the running relative to those other teams. So we still have a little ways to go. I still think, regardless, Browning and Okudah still favor Ohio State, with Marvin being the wild card, and Little still favoring Stanford.
Let's go through the four of them. Okay, we'll start with Walker Little. Which he has to be named after Walker, Texas Ranger, right? Are we?
No, I'm not.
The timeline of when he was born and the name of that show. We're gonna have to. We had him on he was actually a podcast guest. I don't think we asked him that. So maybe next time you talk to him, you can. He'll probably have no idea what that show is. But anyway, Walker Little. Okay, I'll make a pick. You make a pick right now. I pick Stanford. I think he's going to Stanford.
Well, I already made all my picks. I picked Stanford as well.
Number 2, you mentioned Okudah and Browning. You have them both going to Ohio State, correct?
Yes.
Oh, boy, I think Okudah's definitely going to Ohio State. Browning, I could see something strange happening there, but I guess I'll go with you in Ohio State. And then the man.
I would say the only my guess for Browning is team number 2 would be TCU. And they might come through and steal his commitment at the end. But otherwise, I think it's Ohio State.
Okay. And then the last one, Marvin Wilson. So hard to predict. What's your pick?
If LSU announces that Ed Orgeron is the coach going forward, then I think LSU starts to become the favorite again.
What's the story with Texas A&M? It's a no-go there?
Listen, as much as I want to be friends with Texas A&M, and well, listen, here's the deal. So I think Texas A&M is more in play for Walker Little than they are for Marvin Wilson. I'll say that. But Texas A&M, I think they've got too much ground to make up with Marvin relative to the other schools to come through and steal his commitment.
Okay, I'm going to go off the board here. Say Texas makes a big hire at head coach, and guess who's coming to Texas? Marvin Wilson. So completely off the board. So that wraps up that topic. A little fun game we like to play. Now, this week, usually we would transition into commitment issues conversations. We do not have an interview this week because we had 4 guests last week. Can you believe that, Nick? What a list. So if you missed that, go back and check it out. Nick had
Texas fans, go back and listen to the Texas interview again. I don't know if it might have slipped through the cracks a little bit with Texas fans, but go back and listen to that again.
Right, we had a Texas-centric conversation with Michael Huff, who had a great career for me on Madden back in the day, and Jordan Shipley, a talented wide receiver for the Longhorns. They talked about Charlie Strong and all the above. And then I had a conversation with Kamir. Right, what was his name? It's not Kamir, that's the brother. Kamir's the brother. Akbar Baja Bilamila, who is the host of American Ninja Warrior. That was on a regular episode. And then Rob Cassidy, which I believe, shouting from the end of a hallway, had a conversation with Bob Stoops, which was its own episode as well. So check those out, and we'll be back with another interview next week. I got a couple of irons in the fire as well. So let's get right into the tweet of the week.
Don't subtweet me. You man, you chicken.
So we had a crazy week in Memphis. So let's go over this Memphis story, Nick. I'm going to break it down for you a little bit. Let me riff. So we had a situation where there was a Memphis football player who allegedly stole one of his teammates' video games, the aforementioned Madden. Okay.
Yeah.
When the second player found out that it happened, he confronted the Madden thief, the alleged Madden thief, and there was a physical confrontation resulting in him getting the game back, right?
Yeah.
Well, later on that night, he called the cops because someone had taken a gun and shot up his car. Right? So,
wow.
So the cops were involved.
Without him in it, correct?
Right, without him in it. Both players are suspended from the team. And then shortly thereafter, so that's a bunch of bad publicity and a very Memphis type story. Not what you want to hear. Memphis fans were very upset about it because one of their top offensive players last year that was involved. So then you have 3 players decommit from Memphis, including their 4-star tight end commit, which is obviously one of the highest ranked players that they'll have committed in the class. And 3 of the players from the state of Oklahoma decommit. Well, that then comes in a tweet from one of their commitments, because we had a lot of people reaching out to him. He's also from the state of Oklahoma, and you say, okay, well that makes sense. He should have some connections. Let's get our boy. I think it's Marcus Green on the phone from Miami, Oklahoma. What a place! Scenic beaches there in Miami. And he tweets, "No interviews, please. I have nothing to do with their decisions," with 4 exclamation points. Right. Okay, so now, to the normal person, you may read this tweet and say, "Oh, big deal. He didn't want to do interviews." But number one, do we really think that anybody hit the kid up asking to do an interview with him about the 3 other players who committed? What do you think?
Yes, I do. I don't know. I feel like here's the thing, and what I was gonna bring up when we had talked about this before we started recording is kids that come out and say on Twitter, it's a weird it's really a weird juxtaposition for you to come out on Twitter and post something, anything, whether you're decommitting, making a commitment, talking about other kids decommitting, and ending it by saying no interviews. That's really my frustration is you clearly want some level of attention by inserting yourself into that situation, and then but then to say don't talk to me about it is really, heel move of the week as far as I'm concerned.
Well, we had I had a kid recently he texted me and said, "Hey, I decommitted from school X," right? And I was like, "Oh, okay." I was like, "Did you tweet it already?" He said, "Yeah." So I go look at the tweet and it says, "I'm decommitted, no interviews," right? And then he texted me to let me know of the situation, and at which point
we've talked many times. You're definitely the outlier in this industry for the number of people that reach out to you about things when other people. That's a textbook example of where for all the people that think that Woody Wommack is not a power player in the recruiting coverage industry.
Well,
I can't, I can't get kids to give me the time of day. You know what I mean? And then to have that be your situation is really an enviable, sort of deal for me.
well, I texted him back. I said, I thought you said no interviews. So
Uh,
I hit him right back with it when he wanted to start doing interviews. So we did do a mini.
well, then did he cut off conversation or
Well,
no?
we finished it off, but I didn't get too in depth because unfortunately for him, the school had basically dropped him, which was kind of a bummer on his front because I felt bad
Mm.
for him. So, which is something that really happened. So we'll move on. Memphis, unfortunately, they've lost a couple of games, lost a couple of commits, and but guess what? You got the tweet of the week. He's still committed. So. Let's move on to the game of the week. Of course, we make our picks every week, and guess what? Last week we all picked Nebraska to cover the 9-point spread against Wisconsin, and guess what they did, Nick? They covered it. Ding, ding, ding. Nick and Rob moved to 6-2 on the season, which is incredible. If you were betting money on those picks, you'd be in the money. I am 5-3, which guess what? You'd still be in the money because I'm above 500. So. This week
It's just not as much.
we figured let's ride the hot hand. Let's go with Nebraska again. They're playing at Ohio State. Ohio State a 17.5-point favorite. Boy, that's a lot of points, Nick. What's your take on this game?
Well, geez, I mean, from both sides of the coin, I think there's a little bit of question surrounding Nebraska quarterback Tommy Armstrong and just how effective he actually is as the quarterback of that offense there after having been in that role for several years, which is kind of crazy to considering considering how well they've done this season. Certainly a lot of people expected them to lose the game against Wisconsin, but I thought they put up a pretty good fight. They hung in there and did exactly what we expected them to do. Not just covering that spread, but really gave Wisconsin a good game there. Ohio State, that's another situation where the vultures are starting to circle a little bit. People wondering what's going on with that offense, how effective, has the quarterback position been over the past couple weeks for them as well. And 17.5 points, given all those circumstances, is a pretty big spread. Now, this game is at Ohio State, which they hosted Northwestern last week as well, if I remember correctly. Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. And that was a very close game, which you and I both watched closely. You being 2 to 3 plays ahead of me and spoiling the game for me repeatedly via text.
Well, well, it's not like you've never done that to me before, but anyway, so get listen, man, I really want to say, because I've really been betting with my heart on a lot of these picks, and I want to say Armstrong hears the whispers, takes the opportunity to go into Ohio State as a statement game for him. Nebraska has a chip on their shoulder. People have been telling them all season long that they're not as good as their record says. Ohio State, meanwhile, just skimming by with victories. Northwestern really, giving them a game as well last week, and probably had a better chance to win if they would have managed some things a little bit better, as you'll probably complain about here shortly. I really want to pick Nebraska to cover here in this situation. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going with the Huskers again. Nebraska fans, give me a high five over the airwaves.
Yeah, you guess what? I'm going all in with the old Husk Nation, which is not
Yes.
not a term that they use, but I guess what? I just coined it. I really enjoyed that ESPN the commercial where they had the Nebraska fan at the DMV trying to pick out a custom license plate, and all of them were taken. And he just kept trying to do variations of Husk, which maybe we could dig that up, play the audio of that. But anyway, I like the Huskers. That's too many points. 17.5. Nebraska or Ohio State lost the week before. 4.5 points. 4-point win over Northwestern in a game. Northwestern, you have the ball. I was like screaming at the TV, and I don't care who wins or loses. I'm not a fan of Northwestern or anybody else. You have the game. You're in the red zone. Go for a touchdown. Kick a field goal with 3 minutes left and 2 timeouts or whatever. I mean, they just blew that game down the drain, and I couldn't believe it. So if I'm a Northwestern fan, I'm mad about the way that worked out. If I'm an Ohio State fan, I'm very happy that the old ball coach there at Northwestern didn't know what he was doing. So I'll take.
If we ever did a contest where like the grand prize was you get to watch a football game with me and Woody, which is a contest nobody would enter. But if they did, the amount of complaining we would do from the choices the coaches make throughout the course of the game would just really, I mean, that would really be turnoff for whoever won that sweepstakes.
Yeah, well,
for sure, 'cause
that's why, my neighbors across the street invited me over to watch football. They're notorious Florida State fans and War Chant subscribers, believe it or not. They invited me over to watch a game with them a couple weeks ago, and I was like, nah, you probably don't want me to come over and watch that game. So, not to mention, guess what? I got 5 TVs at my house, so I don't need to come watch yours. So,
yeah.
humble brag. Anyway, let's move on. It's time for Rants and Recommendations. This week, I'm going to start. Well, I don't really have a recommendation this week. But by the way, did you get any trick-or-treaters to come by your house for Halloween?
No, but I'm living in an apartment right now too, so it's a lot of
right. But I figured there might be some children, some. Yeah,
well, Halloween's
some
actually. Oh yeah, Halloween was yesterday. No, I don't know. No, we didn't get any.
Well, guess what? I bought about $50 worth of candy, and
you'll be eating all of it.
9 total. Well, no, we had about 9 total kids make it out.
Yeah.
And guess what? The last 3 kids got a lot of candy.
Well, listen, I mean, Halloween ain't what it used to be. We got clowns running around in the streets that everybody doesn't know if they're just messing around or not. And
no, these
other
clowns
things
are a major problem here. Different rants. So anyway, I hope everyone enjoyed their Halloween. I don't have a recommendation, but guess what? Friday night, Nick, I made a long road trip. I mentioned to you that, I haven't traveled as much this season as I have in years past, which leads to me watching a lot of players in the state of Georgia. I got a big month of December. I'm going to be on the road basically the entire month. So I'm trying to stay close to home. And I decided to make a trip up to old Franklin County, Georgia, which is a bit of a drive, about an hour and a half away. In small town, it's kind of a place where everybody turns out to watch the game, real Friday Night Lights situation. They were playing Morgan County. Morgan County's got probably three Power 5 caliber prospects on their team. And I thought maybe I could find somebody on Franklin County. I was wrong about that. But guess what? Every time Franklin County scores, they do this tradition, which you and I have seen at several schools, where they shoot a cannon. And you think, okay, a cannon, like a big cannon? No, first of all, the cannon is the size of like a remote control car. Their things are tiny. But when they shoot this thing off, I mean, it sounds like a bomb has exploded. I mean, the sound is so loud at these things. I mean, I've complained about it before. I wore my headphones specifically to alter the sound, and I woke up on Saturday morning with a swollen eardrum because of the explosion sound was so loud at this school. I've considered writing the athletic director a note. Guess what? Franklin County, I understand. Cool. It's a tradition. Why? Why is that a tradition? Yeah, I could see if you're okay, your Army, your Navy, okay, you shoot cannons. That's what you do. I mean, it's something that happened. I mean, maybe it's a Civil War thing. I don't know, but you cannot shoot off in what world at a school where if you bring a pocket knife to school, you get expelled? You're allowed to shoot off cannons in stadiums full of people? It's a safety issue.
Well, it's not a real cannon.
Well, guess what? What happens if you accidentally, you think it's a blanket, it's an actual cannonball in there that shoots out onto the field in the middle of the game. I sent you a video clip of me from a game at Roswell earlier this year when somebody scored a touchdown and the cannon shot off, and I almost dropped the camera because
that was the problem with that, because they shot that cannon off the second that he crossed the plane. It wasn't like he scored, there's a little celebration, everybody's rowdy, then we shoot the cannon off. It was like it was like they had a sensor for when, and it ruined your shot basically, right? I mean, the second that he crossed the plane, your camera's shaking because you weren't expecting that to happen. What a disaster. And I mentioned to you the last time you brought that up, the big thing here in Texas is train horns. And say what you want to about cannons, at least it's a boom, impact, one-time thing. With the train horns, if you're within 50 feet of directly in front of that thing, it's going, and they hold that mother out for a long time. And that's really a situation that I just am not happy about myself.
That's annoying, but it's not quite as jarring. I think, leave that stuff
jarring.
to hockey. I mean,
it's jarring.
Well, it's not as jarring as that, a potential weapon, a bomb being detonated in a crowd full of people. I think it's unsafe. I wouldn't do it. I think it's in poor taste given, today's current climate and the kind of events that have been happening
in Texas, Woody.
Yeah. So, the train horn, guess what? That's a hockey. The hockey thing is like the boat horn. I know they used to do it in Oregon. I grew up in Oregon. The Oregon Ducks do a boat horn type thing. But when you're at a huge stadium, it's not as jarring as it is, like you said, when we're in the stadium, there's 1,000 people there, and it sounds like, you know, I don't know. I hate trains. I hate train horns.
The one thing, continuing on with the train conversation, I was at a game a couple weeks ago, Cypress Ranch, I believe. Their marching band did a thing before kickoffs where the drum line would do like a chung 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 chung, and then like all the horn section managed to sync up like random like wah wah wah. Like they never did the same thing all the time, but it sounded, and they would pick up the speed a little bit, and it sounded like a train. And they would get a little bit louder, and it sounded like a train coming down the tracks right up to the moment where they kicked the ball off, which I thought was a much better use of the train.
That is pretty. That's pretty good. I will give a big shout to the Morgan County Band, which did a Willy Wonka themed halftime show.
Ah, very nice.
Which really had me enjoying that. And also, after they won the game, it was Franklin County's senior night, and when the game ended, the Morgan County Band then played that Flow Rider song, "My House." Which I really enjoyed as being passive aggressive.
I'm not going to give anybody props for playing Flow Ride under any circumstances, but I will say, on the heels of my recommendation last week for playing Paula Abdul, going into the deep dives of good music selections for marching bands, we saw Justin Northwest play "Don't Fear the Reaper" coming out of a quarter break, and the drum major had himself the cowbell and was making that not quite the, you know, the unexpected selection of "Cold Hearted Snake" by Paula Abdul, but still something I appreciated as a non-common, non-traditional marching band selection.
Right. So I enjoyed I had a nice meal in Franklin County. I enjoyed the town up there in Carnesville, but I actually enjoyed the game atmosphere. But you got no cannons. I don't think it's appropriate. So let's hear your rant, old Nicky boy. What are you going to complain to us about?
Well, here's something that I know everybody can relate to. Imagine this. You're going to the grocery store. You just need to pick up, a gallon of milk, a carton of eggs, a potato, whatever the case is. You're coming down the aisle, and somebody who's already parked and is walking to the store, we've all walked with our cell phone in our hands, but sometimes these people don't even have that as an excuse, and they just start drifting into the middle of the lane as you're trying to make your way to whatever parking spot you might find. And they're just completely oblivious to the fact that any traffic whatsoever might be coming the same way that they just drove down seconds ago to park their own car.
Yes.
The other thing that really and this is a rant and recommendation, a part 2 to the parking lot habits, is, listen, if you've got a Vespa, if you've got a motorcycle, something that's a bike-sized vehicle, you don't need to take up a whole parking spot. This isn't a new rant for anybody. Everybody's had that moment where they think they've got the primo parking spot. They start pulling in, and lo and behold, there's a bicycle. If you have a motorcycle and you're that big of a jerk to take up a whole parking spot, at least park it to the end of the parking space, so that way we don't already start our turn into the spot before we see you in that spot. The one that really gets me is when people take parallel parking spots with their motorcycle, because if you're in a situation where you're trying to parallel park, you're definitely in a situation, it's a high traffic area, high volume, high concentration of people. Parking spots are at a premium, and you and your Kawasaki are taking up an entire, parking spot that could be meant for a sedan that's carrying 4 to 5 people. You really have to have some chutzpah to be pulling that maneuver. But I did say, on the other end of things, in my own parking lot at the aforementioned apartment that I live in, somebody had the decency to park their motorcycle behind their own car in one parking spot. And I was like, you know what? Bravo. Congrats to you. You really thought this one through, and you're acting in everybody's best interest. So thank you to that person. 2 units over.
Boy, what a marathon rant from Nick. That may be one of your best ever. I don't have a recommendation. I did, that app I recommended last week, Tunity. I actually did a demonstration for some acquaintances at the bar the other night, and boy, you want to talk about a round of applause. I would recommend it just for that, just so you could show it to people. They were so impressed. They acted like I invented the app. So give that a shot if you didn't hear why I like it. Check out last week's episode. So anyway, that does it for us. Remember to subscribe to us on iTunes, visit rivals.com, follow us on Twitter, all the above. If you're listening to the show, you probably do those things anyway, but you get the deal. A big shout to M. Deuce, our friend Mark, for providing the music. You can find him on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com, M-Deuce. He's working on some new stuff. I know he put some videos up on Facebook. Hey, we're still waiting on those T-shirts there, Marky boy. I thought there was a promise of some T-shirts coming our way. I haven't seen those yet. So, of course, we haven't given him anything for. I'll send him a Rivals hat, and then he'll have to send us some shirts. So that wraps it up for us. We'll be back with another episode next week.